All right, so welcome everyone to the colored pencil nectarines drawing, and welcome Debbie. I just let you in. We're just starting. Um, and so basically, we're going to need about 12 colored pencils. I put those in the chat. I may have left, did I leave one out? I may have left one out. Maybe not. But basically, it is a dark red, whatever that means to you in your, in your box of colors. And then a regular red. So a dark red could be like what I have here in Crayola. It is a mahogany. So it could be a mahogany, sort of like a, they used to call it brick red, like a darker red. And then a red, orange, golden yellow, yellow. We also need a yellowish green, which I realized I forgot to put on the supply list. I apologize. I don't know how I missed yellow green. So a yellow green, please add that for this evening. Brown, blue, black, white, purple, and pink. And we kind of use a little smattering of some of those. So, sort of like just a little bit of an addition of color for those. So, but I'll remind you again as we start in with the colors. So first we're going to start with our pencil, and I just let Tiffany in. And so this is a drawing that I did when I created the original. Welcome, Tiffany. We just got started. It's nice to see you here. We are recording. So I'm just going to press mute just so there's no background noise. So this is the basic drawing of, and welcome Jess as well. So we want to create these type of shapes. So I'm going to move this aside and instruct you on how to do that. And then of course, we fill it in with all the good details. So getting started here. Again, this is 8.5 by 11 paper. This is just printer paper. You are welcome to use something a little bit smaller. As you can see, it's in the middle of the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So you can use something smaller like 7 by 10 or, I don't know. Yeah, something smaller like that. All right, so we're going to first start off with the nectarine on our left. And so we're looking at this as if it is a circle, but it's going to have lots of bends, bending and sort of shaping. And so I also want to remind everyone to draw lightly. I draw a little bit darker on Zoom, and you can't really tell because it's on Zoom, but this is darker than what I would normally draw using a, using colored pencil, I should say. So we're kind of curving in the middle here. This is the middle portion of where, the top part of the nectarine is. And again, I'm going to make this a little darker. Here is that, in between portion. I'm also going to go a little closer now. There we are. And we want to make this a little bit split here on the bottom. And we'll go back and, add a few more kind of details before we actually start. But this is the first part of our nectarine here on the left. And then we're also going to be creating the one on the right. I know we haven't finished off with the bottom portion yet, but we will. Let me move this over just a little bit. Okay. And so what we want to do for this one is we're going to actually come down where our other nectarine is, and our shape of the half cut nectarine starts a little bit higher than where the bottom one is here. So here is right? This is the left nectarine, and you can see that this is where it ends. And so our other half of the nectarine is going to start a little bit above, and we're going to kind of make a shape like this since it is open, curving around the other side. And because this shape is sort of at an angle, we are able to see a bit of the outside of the nectarine. So we're making it look three-dimensional. So take your time. I'm going to talk a little more about this portion of it. As you can see, this is the top part of that nectarine. You know, it's split in half. Here is the stem. Looks three-dimensional. And then we have the other part of it over here, but we're looking at it whereas this is the top portion, like we sliced it in half. And then we're just going to make this a little more flat here. And we're going to go over to this side and make it a little more flowy, making that line a little more flowy. But I wanted us to get that shape first, and we'll go back to it. And that's why I always mention to draw with a very light hand. I'm always telling when I teach kids, draw light until you get it right. So drawing light allows us to erase easily and correct our, our lines. So we're going to come here in the middle before we fix a little more of the shape on the outer edge of the nectarine. So if you join me here in the middle, we have part of the, since we've sliced the nectarine, we have the inside seed that is sort of, I don't know, it reminds me of like a human brain. When I saw pictures of it, I didn't have a real nectarine, but I saw pictures, and I've seen, I think we've all seen the inside of a nectarine, right? And I've never really stared at the inside of it because I wasn't really drawing it. I just wanted to eat it. But I then started staring and looking, and I thought, that is very strange. It reminds me a bit of a brain. So this is what I think of now when I cut open half of a nectarine. So for now, we're just going to create this shape like so. And we are going to go back and obviously make some more detail, but I'd like to spend a little time recreating this shape around here just to add a little more detail. But I'll let everybody get caught up. We'll start sort of changing this outer shape just a little bit, or it's actually the inner shape, really. It's the flesh of the nectarine. So I'll let everybody get caught up. Okay. So what we're going to do over here, we're going to add a bit of a bump. So this part is pointy, and we already have that. But we're going to add a little bit of a bump here because basically right over here, you can see a little bit of the outer flesh. So this is what we are creating right here. Okay, so here's that little part of the other portion of the flesh. We are going around here. We're going to go inward just a little bit and then outward again. Let me erase this as we're going around. So again, inward and then a little bit out, inward again. And then we pretty much have the rest of this, but we're going to straighten this out a little bit. I had you add a little bump here prematurely, so I apologize for misdirecting you there. And we're also going to go just a little bit closer to the inside. So I'm going to move this a little closer to here and come downward like this. And so we'll have to move our stem here as well. This part is fine. But I like to give it just a little bit more of a sort of wiggly line. And then we draw the stem coming from here. And so we make the stem three-dimensional. So we're going to make a line like this, and then it sort of looks a little bit like a French fry. I'm just going to show that up close for that stem. A little bit like that, almost like a little curved French fry. Okay, so now we have that. We now want to fix this area in relation to this part of the nectarine. So I'm going to bring this up just a little bit, and then we have a bit of a bump that happens up here. And then it comes down behind our nectarine. So fix this a little bit. And we can go up a bit more with this section, down. So it should look a little bit like that. And then we're also going to fix this part, make it a little more nectarine-like by adding a bit of a bump down here. And sort of comes to almost like a point over here. Sort of changes plane. And then we want to make sure that this bottom portion of this nectarine is going to go up against this one. So also make this a little more, I don't want to say square, but not as round. It comes to a point, but then it goes back towards the open nectarine. And then we're going to create the shadow shapes. So basically drawing the shadows. So we start off with the left. And it goes about right here. And then we have the next shadow shape of the next nectarine. A little bit of a bump here. Around and then back toward this nectarine where there's a little bit of a bump. Oops. About right here. Inward. It's kind of the shape of the nectarine. Now we want those lines to be lighter. I drew them darker so you can see them, but they shouldn't look like, actual lines. And we'll go and we'll lighten those up shortly. So take a quick look at your drawing to see if you want to fix anything, because now we're just going to make everything a little bit lighter by taking our eraser and just lightening up our lines just in case we drew a little too dark, because now we go over everything in colored pencil. You also want to do the same thing, as I mentioned, to the shaded areas, those shadow shapes. Okay, and just real quickly, you just want to be able to still see what you drew, but you want it to be lighter since especially because we're using some light colors. Okay. All right, so we are going to start off with our dark red. And what we're going to do is we're going to be tracing the lines around the nectarines. So it shouldn't be marker dark. It should be like you are replacing the pencil with the red colored pencil. So we're going to start off and just again, as I mentioned, just trace around the first nectarine on the outside. Also going into the middle, this middle line here. Basically tracing this nectarine. And then we're going to do the same to the other one as well. So we're tracing all around the second nectarine. Oops. We're even going to trace around the flesh, right? The inside. We are going to trace the stem. So we're going to go over the stem in the red, and then also the seed inside as well in red. And in the other, we can also do the stem in the other nectarine as well. And then when you are finished, you want to now erase your pencil. So meaning the pencil, the graphite underneath the red colored pencil. So just erase very lightly. It's okay if you still have, some of the graphite on there. We just want to get most of it off. We want mostly the red to be there now. This also kind of shows if you've missed tracing around something, it'll show that. because all of a sudden your lines will disappear. Oops. Okay, and we're going to put down our red pencils for now because we're going to first create our shadow shapes. So again, just making sure that you lightened up your shadow shape lines with your eraser. And then we're going to grab our black. And so we're going to very lightly trace our shadow shape lines. We're going to be using our black as gray in this instance. So shading rather lightly. First, we just want to trace our shadow shape. And then we're now going to very lightly start shading here on the left side and using our pencil from the side, we're just going to lay down a very light shaded area. But what we're going to do is we're going to get even lighter in this corner of the shadow. So I'll say that again. So we're going to, we're going to go very light. As a matter of fact, let's go very light at first. Let's approach it this way. So we're going to just go very light. We're going to fill in the first shadow shape with the black. It's going to look very gray or like a light gray. And we're going to do the same to the other shadow shape as well. So we're just putting down a very light shade of gray. And it doesn't have to be perfect right now. Like it's okay if the white of the paper is still showing. As a matter of fact, it should be when you're finished with the first shadow shape. You're going to add the same thing to the next shadow shape. So basically, in shadows, there are many colors, and this one will be no exception. So our first color is sort of a lightish gray for now. And we're going to build up the color as we add the colors, but it will never look solid because then it wouldn't look like a shadow. Our next color we're going to use is blue. So we're now going to add some color on the left side of this shadow shape. We're going to make a very light line like this. And then we're going to shade We're going to add blue
That's blue.
to that line. So inside that shape, we're going to add some blue on top. And we're also staying in that same shadow area. We're also going to add some blue in this corner here. So we didn't really make a shadow shape there within the shadow shape because we want this one to be a little more open-ended. So we'll color the blue till about here. And we're going to add one more using the blue. And it's going to be about right here. And it's almost going to look like we're creating a heart shape, kind of like the indent of a heart shape. So again, that's just going to be a light blue. Well, we're using our blue, but.
Oh, cleaning the cars. Got tired of doing nothing, huh?
It did, yeah, you know me.
Mm-hmm.
And then our next color is going to be purple. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to shade over everything in purple. So we're now adding a layer of purple to the blue that we created. We're added here, and then we go into the black. So basically everything, just a shade of purple over everything. Now it's a light shade, it's a light layer. Oops, my pencils are rolling all over. Oops. My desk is tilted, and sometimes I put pencils in the wrong place and they just start rolling towards me. So again, what we're doing is we are adding purple on top of everything. For now. And when you're finished, you're going to grab your black again, because we're going to go a little bit darker now in the shadow shape. And so right up against where our nectarine is on the left, we're going to shade, go a little heavier with the black where we added the blue. So we're going to go a little bit heavier in that corner. And you're probably thinking, all this for a shadow? Yes. It'll help it look realistic. And we're now going to go over everything in the black, but we're not going to go as dark yet. We're going light over these middle parts where we added the purple. So this whole section, where we added the purple and there's some blue here. We still go light. But when we get back here, right up against our nectarine, we're going to make a shaded black line like this. And then we're going to shade in that corner a bit darker with the black. So I'll say that again in case you were still shading on the other part. We go underneath this portion of the nectarine and we shade a little bit darker with the black, kind of like outlining it a little bit, but still using shading. And then we're going to pop on over to this section of the shadow shape, and we're going to shade darker. So pressing just a little bit more. And we're going to do that on this whole side of the shadow shape until we get to this corner here. So you can see I'm going back and forth with my pencil to fill in the white parts of the paper. I'm also using a quick circular motion. That's blending it. You know, if it doesn't feel comfortable to do that, that's okay. You can go over it again in the opposite direction. It will fill in those spaces. See, and you've just created a shadow shape, but we have one more, sort of one more color, which is going to be our pink. That is going to go on top of the entire shadow shape. So your shadow shape should have a bit of a pinkish tinge to it now. I'm going to make this a little darker so you can see it on Zoom. There we go. So now it's got that tinge of pink to it. And we're going to go over to the other side and repeat that process. And then we're finished with the shadow shapes. Yeah, the shadows actually take, I feel like the shadows actually take a little longer than the actual nectarines. I mean, maybe they're about equal, but Shadow shapes take a little more precision almost. A delicate touch is more like it. So our next color for the next shadow shape is we're going to start off with the blue. We laid down a very light shading of the black, right? All inside that shadow shape. And now we're going to do the same thing that we did over here on this one, but basically just making some things a little bit darker. So we're going to go here right up against the other shadow shape, and we're going to add blue in this corner, and then we're going to kind of round out in the next corner across from that shadow shape. So kind of like this, and using our blue. And then we're going to do the same on the other side using our blue. We're going to go right up against our nectarine. And basically this shadow shape is going to kind of go out for most of the shape. It's a little bit darker blue than what we were doing in the other one. And we're gonna be shading that till about right here. And again, this is with our blue for right now. And we're gonna go out, we're gonna extend that blue a little more into this area, but we're gonna make it lighter. So now what you're doing is you're going so light. The pressure is very light, barely touching the paper. And again, this is with the blue. So we're filling in the rest of that shape, still with that layer of blue, but we're changing the pressure that we're coloring with by making it very light, so that there is now a change between, you see that it's a little darker over here and here, but lighter here in the center. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit of a curve of shading with the blue right here outside of the nectarine. So it's sort of around it, but there's a little bit of a space that we leave in the shadow shape. So you can see, I'm not coloring here, I'm coloring here. So we're just bringing that blue out a little more in that part. And then we're going to grab our black again. And now we're going to go over everything again using our black, but we're doing a very light shading at first so that now it's going to look kind of bluish, bluish gray. So now, for right now, we're just shading over everything in one more layer using our black. And here again, it doesn't have to be anything perfect. We just want to kind of add that color on because we're actually going to add a little bit of green to this shadow shape and some pink. So we're going to pick up our green and we're going to start over here on the left side of the shadow shape on top of where we did the blue, and we're going to add some green. So that yellow green. I'm going to go a little closer here. So we're adding yellow green here, and then we're also going to add it here, right on the other side in the blue, the darker blue area as well. And we're going to bring that green out into the rest of the shadow shape. And again, it's sort of a very light, I must have something underneath my paper because it made kind of, oh yeah, it made these two dark marks. You don't want those two dark marks in your shadow. That, unfortunately, there was a piece of, oh, I think it was a piece of clay. I was working on my kid's project with clay. I think I didn't clean it up very much. It was pretty late when I was doing it and I was tired, so I think I just didn't get all the little spots of clay. That's what that is. So you don't want those spots on your drawing. Okay, so now we're going to pick up our black for one final time, and we're going to make two portions a little bit darker. The first being on the right side, right underneath the nectarine. We're going to kind of trace under it on the side of the shadow. And then we're actually going to trace the shadow or the shadow shape till about right here. And then we're going to shade with more pressure than we have right here in the corner of that shadow shape. We're going to make that kind of dark. Not black, but like a fuzzy charcoal. But then we're going to get lighter, but still staying sort of that charcoal color. And we're going to expand all along this side of the shadow shape. So I'm going to kind of do it real quickly first, show you where you should be sort of ending that dark shading. So we're going to go till about right here. And we're going to get darker right along the edge of the shadow shape here. So you can see that I'm coming back and I'm, coloring, recoloring over it a bit darker. And we're fading it out here in the middle. But we're going to come up along the edge next to the other shadow shape and make it a little darker around the edges on this side. So kind of in the corners here, and as it touches the other shadow shape. And then you can lightly fade it out by going into, the middle sections and just very lightly shading, kind of almost creating not a gradient, but you don't want it to end abruptly into a much darker color. And make sure you neaten up your shadow shape here along the edges just by kind of giving them a little bit of shading inside your border. You can switch direction with coloring in order to do that so that it doesn't get too dark. But then we're just going to go over everything with our pink, just like we did in the other shadow shape. And that's our last color with the shadows. So again, I'm just taking my pink and I'm now going on top of the entire shadow shape with the pink. You can go back and add a little bit darker of the black right underneath this portion of the nectarine where it kind of hits with the shadow. Like right there. That's a good question, Gail. So we used green on the one shadow because there was a little bit more of a greenish tinge, and we didn't in the other one because of that. That was a very good question. If you feel like your shadow is off as far as coloring, and you think that the green will help it in the other one, you are welcome to use it. That also goes for the pink. Like if you feel like you want to balance one more shadow, you can add a little more pink if you like. That's an excellent question. So we're now going to get into our nectarines. And the first color that we're going to pick up is our orange. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating the texture on top of the nectarines. And so, and what we'll do, so we're going to start off light or sort of in a medium way by using the orange. And so by that, I mean, we're going to come to the center over here and we're going to start shading as if we are shading the red for now. And that's right up against here where it sort of splits. And then what we're going to do from there is we're actually going to we're going to skip space in the nectarine and we're going to start adding in almost like striping with this orange. We're following the shape of the nectarine. So we always start towards the middle, or the center, I should say, which is where the stem is. And we're going to go around and we're just creating, for now, light orange lines as we're going around. Now, it's going to shift as far as how you create the lines. So we're going to shift here. We'll come back to this part, but for now, we're going to shift and make them curve this way. And in this other section, we're going to create sort of an outline using the orange so that we don't go into the space between where the edge of the nectarine is for now, because that's going to be more of a whitish pink where we're going to get that fuzz, on the nectarine. So again, what we do is we take our orange, we're just going to make a curved line so that we know not to go past that line for now. And then we're now going to continue and create our curved sort of stripes using the orange. And we're going to start switching again as far as how the stripes go. So you can come back up here. And then your lines get a little bit shorter, like so. And we're going to start to do the same thing in the other one. So we still have this orange. And first we're going to outline this whole line using our orange. And we're going to do the same around the other side using our orange, but we're going to get lighter in this section as we're tracing. So we got a little darker right here using our orange, right? And then we get a little lighter here. And then we're going to trace here. And we're actually going to create a bit of a shadow shape for right now, right here, by just coloring in a bit of orange on this side.
Anita, the right hand of your drawing's gone out of the camera.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I was moving and not realizing. Thank you. Okay, camera is fixed. I appreciate that. So we're going to come over here. And this is where we do the shading. And then we're going to create a bit of an orange line here because we're also going to shade in this section too. Again, still using our orange. I love that we can use those emojis that way. It's so fun. And then we're going to start to do the same thing on the skin over here. We're going to, add a bit of the orange as we go downward. So again, we start up where the top of the nectarine is, and then we follow around just a few of the lines, like so. And then we're going to actually start in the middle section here. So we're going to add some orange to all around this middle. We're going to add a kind of like a sunburst. So adding individual strokes, and we will go back and make this more orange. We're going to add red too, but we're starting to get the darker part around the seed. The seed is inside the fruit. And there is a bit of some, I don't know, it's like staining almost. It's really quite pretty. And then we're even going to go on the inside and we're going to start making these curved lines with some indents like this. So we kind of curve inward coming from the bumps on the outside. Like so, like we start to kind of extend some lines from the side of the seed. And there's actually some, it's kind of like almost like crater-like with these kind of indents. The next time you get a nectarine or a peach, I want you to cut it open and take a look at the seed. It's very interesting. And then we're now going to go along the edge of this open nectarine, and we're going to create lines along the edge all around, like so, on both sides. You know, and right now it's light. So again, we're taking our orange and we're adding light strokes of orange all around our edge. And then we're going to grab our yellow. This is where it gets really fun. In case you weren't having fun yet, it's about to get more fun. So we're now going to color everything on this side a light yellow. So we're not worrying about making it dark right now. We're coloring over everything in yellow in this one right here. And then we're going to hop on over to the other one. So we just want to kind of stain it yellow. And we're going to do the same on the other one, including the stem. So on this one, remember we created that space. If you already colored that a little yellow, that's okay, but we don't want to go past that space for now. We'll come back to that much later. But for now, we have everything yellow. And then we're actually going to pick up our pink. So we're going to go into the left side here. So we're going to the left one right here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add pink for now to the outside, the part that I said don't go in there yet. We're going to add a little bit pink there. And now we're going to add some pink right at the top of the nectarine on this side, kind of where it's coming from the middle part. We're just going to add sort of a little bit of smattering of pink there. And then we're going to start going on our lines again. Remember how we have these orange lines? We're now going to be adding pink on top of it, but we're just staying on top of the nectarine. So it's just going to look a little bit more like it's got pink on top of yellow. So we're not getting real dark yet, but what we're doing is we're adding the different colors in the nectarine. So we add our lighter colors first, and we start building it up with the color. So there's pink there. And we now go to the outer flesh of the other one. And we start shading pink over this whole section. So now we've got like a pinkish yellow tinge. And then we're going to grab our red. So we're going to start over here on the left side, and we're actually going to start in the middle of our nectarine. And we're actually going to color that in red. The shadow part is here. So we color that in red. And then we're also
Are
going...
you using regular red or dark red?
This is regular red.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And we're going to trace along the split of it here. And then we're going to go back into the stem, and we're going to shade it now in red. But so what I'm doing is the top part, I make one side of it a little darker, like so. So everything is going to have a reddish tinge for right now as we're adding these colors. We are also now going to trace on this nectarine here in the red. So we're getting a little darker around the outside. You're going to come to the other nectarine, and you're going to trace on the bottom portion of this side, and also inside here. That's, oops, that section. So here and here. You're going to go on the inside here and trace the stem in red. And you're going to shade the left side in red. And you're also going to trace this part here in red. And then a little portion here where we added the orange shading, you're now going to just add a little bit of some red shading there. And now we're going to go inside the flesh. So we're now going to flip on over to this one. So we keep going back and forth, adding these same colors. And we're going to start off at the top, but we're not going real dark, but we're starting to add some shading on the flesh using our red. And it's going to look a little bit more like pinkish at first, but you want to keep going and adding stripes. And sometimes the stripes are darker in one section and a little bit lighter in another. So as I'm going down here, I'm going to start making it a little darker here as it's moving around, because we have a dark section up here at the top. So I'm separating the line work and just adding some up here, kind of in this curve. But we are going to go into the bottom portion, but let's just first kind of go around here. And remember, we're not touching the bottom portion yet. So we're extending those lines. And then we're going to start shading on this side of the nectarine, right where the center is. And keep going around, adding shaded lines. So you're going to keep going around. Now there's a dark spot here on the nectarine. So see, I'm making it a little more solid. And then we have some darker shading here closer to where the shadow shape is on this side, right here. So we're now starting to add a little bit more shading. We're going to do the same thing in the next nectarine. But we're going to start first on this part of the skin and make some lines. And then same thing in this section. We make sort of the striping using our red. But then we're going to get a little bit darker right here, where we sort of kind of outline using our red shading this portion of the part that is kind of cut open. And we're going to go in the center again. And now we're using our red where the seed is on the outside. And remember, first we used the orange. Now we're doing a layer of red. You know, again, it's almost like sparkling. You know, the lines are kind of sparkling, coming out from the center of the seed. But when we get to the top, we just do a little bit of red shading. And then we're going to go inside the seed and just shade a little bit where we created the orange areas. We're going to go in and just add a little bit more of some red to that orange. And then we want to pick up our light green. And we're going to start adding some green to the open portion of the nectarine here. So we're going to add some green at the bottom. And then all around the skin coming from the seed. And again, this is just sort of a real quick kind of going all around it. And guess what? You're also going to color your stem green. And you're going to add some green stripes where the red is. I'm going to go into the other one as well. So a little bit of green right here. And then still staying on this side, we're adding a little bit of shading in this section with the green. And then up here, a little bit of green around this area. And then we're going to grab our golden yellow. And we're going to kind of burnish this nectarine right here. So we're now going to press with our golden yellow in the whole thing, including our seed. And on the outside. Of the skin. And we're going to do the same in the one on the left, where we added the red. And then we're going to pick up our orange. And we're now really adding layers of color. So we're going into this outer skin of the nectarine. And we're shading with some orange in this section and the top section. Now you should still have all those colors kind of shining through. And then we kind of want to add some more orange spots as we go around, again, the open part of the nectarine along the edges. And then we're going to go inside the next nectarine. And we're now going to shade orange in those sections. And we're going to extend a bit of the orange in the top portion here. So again, what we're doing is we're now shading a layer of orange on top of all the colors that we created. We're also shading around the top portion of the nectarine here along the edge. And inside the rest of it. Including right around that part where I said, I'll leave that a little bit, you know, the white of the paper. Is everyone okay with 5 more minutes as we finish up?
We're good. If anybody has to leave, we'll send them the recording.
Perfect. Perfect, thank you. And so now we're actually going to get our dark red and our brown as we're darkening up the spots on our nectarines. So again, you're going to get your dark red. I think my dark red rolled off. Oh, there it is. So you're going to get your dark red first, but get your brown ready, or at the ready, I should say. And this is where we're really going to darken up. So we're going to start with this nectarine around the top portion, and we're going to shade around the edge and down at the bottom, like so. So we're now adding the shaded parts, the darker parts of our nectarine. So we went around here. And then we're going to go here in the middle. And this is where we're going to start adding shaded portions or sections using the red. So we sort of go around the edge on this side, shade darker. And then we leave some space and we start to go into the center of our nectarine where it's curving. And it doesn't look like it's curving right now, but if we start to create our lines to curve like this, it's going to look like that. So we get darker on this side and toward the bottom part of our nectarine. And we're going to continue that going around on this side. So same thing, we do some shading, but then we get a little bit darker with our line work, but especially right here, there's a shadow. And that's where we're gonna hit with the brown and a little bit of blue right here. So now we're really trying to make our nectarine very colorful and still have those, the striping, but all the other colors are also in the mix. And we're going to do the same to the skin on the right using our red, sort of, adding some darker shading to the skin with the red. This is the dark red, remember. And when you're ready, you're going to grab your brown, because now we're really going to get dark. We go in the middle on this one and kind of outline our center. And we're going to shade brown on this bottom portion of the stem. And then also we shade in this part of the stem, but go really close because we're darker in this area, but then we kind of fade out a little bit. But now we're going to get really dark in the center. And this is where we're adding a little more of our brown striping. Thanks so much, Karen. You'll get the recording. So now you're adding that brown on the parts that we added the dark red. So that means going around your nectarine. And in this section that's really dark, you add shaded brown, and then you can add a bit of, some striping with the brown. Throughout the nectarine. But there is a shadow here on this side of the nectarine. And we use our brown to create that shadow. We also shade here on those two bumps. Again, this is with the brown. Our brown is the finishing portion. And it's also our finishing portion for the other part of the nectarine where we outline it, where the seed is. Kind of do an outline and add a little bit of that kind of strokes that are coming out from the seed onto the skin, or the flesh, I should say. We also add some shading using the brown on either side of where the this stem is, and on this side of the curve, and here too. So basically, in parts where it's a little darker, which you do want to go a little bit in the skin on this one too. Using just some striping, just some, along with the other colors. But it's a little bit shaded darker right along the edge. And then we've got one more color to add to our center of where this side of the nectarine is. Right in our center, we're going to add blue shading at the top to make it really dark inside the center. I like to add a little bit to the brown on the other side too. So anywhere where you've got a little bit of dark, you can add a little bit here on the skin. This is our blue. Because blue and orange are opposites on the color wheel. And the shadow is sometimes the opposite of the other color. It goes really well together. So I'm so curious to see what everyone's looks like. I'm going to stop the recording